In this video, why Mexico is safer than the United States for Americans. I know it might be hard to believe, but I think by the end of this video, you will come away from it agreeing with me that Mexico not only feels safer, but it also statistically is safer for Americans than being in the United States. So let's get into it. Let's start breaking this down. Because we get a lot of commentary on Twitter, a lot of people basically pointing to homicide statistics in Mexico, pointing out that there are certain cities in Mexico with a higher homicide rate than certain cities in the United States, and saying, look at the homicide rate, the murder rate, it's higher in Mexico, therefore Mexico is more dangerous. I would argue that they are looking at the wrong statistics, and so in this video we're going to handle things not only from a statistical point of view, but also just from a more subjective vibe perspective, how Mexico feels safer as well. But we'll start with the statistics because I want us to be on firm footing in terms of the math, right? So the homicide rates in Mexico, that is the homicide rate for Mexicans. But if you are American, if you are a gringo, if you are a tourist, the homicide rates look very different. So let me hit you with a different set of statistics that most people conveniently forget about. And by the way, the reason they conveniently forget about them is because they want to justify their reason for being in the United States and having to spend $10,000 a month on their cost of living and getting caught up with the rat race and commuting to a suburban office park and living a life that they really don't want to live. And so they have to justify that by showing the Mexico murder rate and saying, look, well, at least I'm not over there with the savages or something like that, right? And so really it's a justification. Anyway, so let's get into the real statistics. So in 2022, 33 million Americans visited Mexico. I'm not sure if that's 33 million individual visits or 33 Americans. I'm guessing it's probably individual visits. But in any case, 33 million US citizens traveled to Mexico in 2022. How many Americans died in Mexico in 2022? 192 Americans died in Mexico in 2022, of which 44 were ruled as homicides. Okay? So 44 homicides of Americans out of 33 million visitors. So what is that? What do we got to do here to find that number? 46 divided by 33, 0.00000. Doing the math here. That is a 0.0000013939% chance of dying in Mexico as an American. And even if you doubled it, even if you said maybe, well, Mexico's, fudging the numbers because they want Americans to visit Mexico. Yeah, I can believe that. But only 192 Americans died in Mexico. So even if you said that all 192 Americans were homicides, which obviously is not the case because some people probably got too drunk or drowned or had a heart attack or any number of things. But even if you said it was 192, let's punch in that number. So 192 divided by 33 million is 0.000058. It's still an extraordinarily low number. It's so low that it's almost mind-bogglingly low. Like, I'm actually stunned that more Americans didn't die in Mexico in 2022. Because not only were there 33 million visitors, but when an American is visiting Mexico, you and I both know that they're going hard. They're drinking more than normal. They're doing more dangerous activities than normal. Maybe they're renting an ATV, or they're swimming even if they're not good swimmers, or they're, going places they shouldn't be, or they're, dating some trashy girls and make the mistake of going back to her place or whatever, like any number of things, right? So Americans in Mexico are actually going hard. They're YOLOing in Mexico. And still only 192 Americans died in Mexico in 2022. Like, that's very low. That's a very low number of Americans YOLOing to pass away in supposedly the most dangerous country in the history of the world, Mexico. So hopefully these statistics prove that Mexico is very safe for Americans. And obviously the second part of that statistic is, well, then why are the murder rates so high in Mexico, in particular cities where they're fighting for cartel territory? And it's because they're fighting for cartel territory. And yes, any city in Mexico could kind of be the next hotspot of cartel violence in Mexico. Usually it's up near the border. Lately it's kind of been in the state of Guanajuato and in some places in the middle. Also, I think in Colima, and it kind of bounces around a little bit. But the point is that that's what's happening to Mexicans in Mexico. But that's not happening, like, Americans in Mexico are having a very different experience for a lot of reasons. And I think there's probably some sort of understanding among criminal elements in Mexico that you simply cannot touch an American because it would be bad for business. Now, there was that case about a year and a half ago where some ghetto black dudes from Texas went down to Matamoros, Tamaulipas, over the border in a rented minivan, and they were clearly doing some kind of drug deal, and they got kidnapped. Okay, I think they even died. I think they died, actually. And then what happened was the cartel in that area actually delivered those cartel members to the police. So the cartel found out which cartel members were responsible for the damage caused to the Americans, and then the cartel handed over those members to the police. They zip-tied them to a truck and put up a sign that said, hey, these are the guys, and then the police arrested them, something like that, right? So the cartel actually has zero tolerance for people touching Americans. I know that's not going to 100% put you at ease, that there is some sort of like dubious pact, and to be honest, like, it's not, it's not set in stone. Like, things can happen in terms of that, but the statistics speak for themselves. Less than 200 Americans a year are dying on 33 million individual visitors or citizens visiting Mexico. The numbers are so low. So they're not touching Americans. And then also just the experience of an American in Mexico is very different because by and large, they're staying in nicer areas. And that feeds into my next point. So the second point is just that America feels more dangerous than Mexico for Americans. And there's a couple reasons for that. The type of violence or the type of danger in Mexico is very different than the type of danger in the United States. So what is the danger in the US? Well, it's car accidents, it's crazy homeless people downtown, it's road rage, it's random stray bullets from shootings, it's like carjackings. The inner cities are insane in the US now. And as I'm sure you know, if you're watching this video, you're probably American or Canadian, that the violence in the US has been absolutely skyrocketing due to the George Soros DAs and how they're not imprisoning anyone and so forth and so on. So the US cities are very dangerous. And I'm telling you right now that you will feel more in danger in Denver than you will in Mexico City. You will feel more in danger in Portland or Seattle or Los Angeles or San Francisco or Denver or really any American city than you will in Mexico City. We're at the point where even Boston feels more dangerous than Mexico City. And Mexico City, by the way, is like 20 million people. Like, it's completely anonymous. Like, someone could obviously, anonymity sort of breeds a little bit more crime because it's easier to kind of, blend in. But Mexico City is very, very safe. And it's basically safer than any American city at this point. Okay? So again, the type of violence in Mexico is a little bit different. On the extreme of the spectrum, crazy stuff happens in Mexico. I'm not going to deny it. Kidnappings and murders and stuff like that. Like, crazy stuff happens in Mexico. But there's a lot less random violence in Mexico. There's a lot less robberies. There's a lot less crazy homeless people. It just overall feels like a society that has checks and balances, right? And people are friendly and people are going to help you. And it just overall feels safer, okay? So not only is Mexico statistically safer than the United States for Americans, but also Mexico feels safer for Americans as well. You don't feel like you're going to get attacked downtown at any random moment, right? There's a lot less random variability. In the US, you're just exposed to random long tail outcomes all the time. You know, car crashes, road rage, homeless people, drug addicts. It's just a lot of random bad situations that could happen statistically if you spend enough time in the US. But in Mexico, these things just don't happen. So overall, whether you're a tourist visiting a week and YOLOing, whether you're a digital nomad visiting Mexico for 1 to 3 months in an Airbnb, or whether you're an expat looking to relocate their family to Mexico, or even a retiree looking to relocate to Mexico in their golden years to stretch out that retirement income. For all of these groups of people, Mexico is going to be safer than staying in the United States. It's going to be less expensive. It's going to be more fun. It's going to be more social. You're going to have better health care. You're going to have better food. And above all, Mexico is going to be safer for you than simply staying in the United States. So it's crazy we're at that point in 2024, but we're at the point where Americans are literally going to be safer in Latin America than simply staying home. Okay, so we'll wrap up the video with that. If you would like to work with My Latin Life on your relocation plan, you can reach out to us. You can book a call with us. You can join our newsletter. You can follow and interact with us on Twitter. Lots of ways to get in touch. See you in the next video.